Let's look at our agenda for this seminar on the 7 behaviors of great leaders. We will start by looking at the actions and what is the appearance or the look of a great leader. Then we're going to talk a little bit about integrity. What do we mean by integrity, and what does it mean for a leader to have integrity? Next comes self-control, growth, and attitude of a great leader. Then very specifically, what are the activities and the habits? And then the focus on others, which basically means rather than being egocentric, how do we, as great leaders or as leaders becoming great, how do we focus on other people? What are some of the things that we can do in that regard? And then a very important insight to what do you pay attention, and we will develop that, and then finally we will review the 7 basic behaviors that we have highlighted all through the agenda. And like Sarah said, we're going to be here for about an hour and 20 more minutes, and at the end we'll save 10 or so minutes for questions for those of you that might have any questions. But let's look right away at what we mean. What is the perception, the walk, the talk, and the look of a great leader? How are perceptions formed, and then something that we can do about it, getting feedback, and then developing super keen awareness, and then formulating a written plan. So what does a great leader walk like? You've all heard of the expression, does he or she, do you walk the talk? You know, those first 2 words are walk and talk. The walk is not just the stride or the gait of the person. It's a lot more than that. It's the way they behave in all the little, especially interpersonal nuances of their experience through the day and at work as well as after work. How do they relate to other people? How do they carry themselves from a professional ethics point of view? How do they appear, as everything from their attire, what they wear, to their grooming, to everything about a person is important. And why is that? The appearance. Why is the appearance so very important? Well, as you know, the majority of people out there get their news and spend a lot of time with television. And television is all about appearance and look. People that have run for president and have been in debates, goes back to the Nixon-Kennedy debates where Nixon looked shabby because he looked unshaven and he was sweaty on his brow and on his upper lip, and the journalists were saying how that really ruined his chances of winning the debate, saying nothing about what the policies were, just the appearance, the look. The look and the walk and the way a leader talks is so very critical. From a very basic level, does a leader enunciate articulately? Are they easy to understand? Do they speak clearly? Do they speak with empathy? Do they have variety in their voice so that when they're with different people, they talk in different modes, different tones to respond to the person? You'll find, I was at a restaurant the other day, and there was a waitress that I don't know why, but if I was going to guess, it was because she had low self-esteem. But she came up to take the order, and she spoke like this. Is there anything else you want? What else do you want? No? Okay, thank you. No? Was that all you want? Very chopped, very short, very curt speaking tone and voice and cadence. And what it did was it made it difficult to understand her because she was young and she looked frail. It wasn't something where you'd say, hey, what did you say? You'd have to be you try to be gentle back, but it would made for a very awkward meal because of the manner with which she spoke. And something that a great leader would never do. A great leader would walk, talk, and look like they are relaxed, in control, disciplined, and focused on the other person, and primarily focused on whether the other person, in this example of the waitress and in the restaurant, focusing on the patron, the people sitting at the table to have a meal, do they fully understand, appreciate, and is it the right time to talk to them? I mean, have you ever been in a restaurant when you're going to order something and you look at the menu and there's nobody around, so you start a conversation and you're right in the middle of a very intense part of the conversation and you're explaining something, maybe even a little emotional to the person you're with, and all of a sudden a waiter or a waitress comes and says, "What do you want to order?" And they are what could be called tone deaf. They're not aware. So a great leader walks, talks, and looks in their posture, in their talk, in their manner of just being. They look refined. They look, depending on the appropriateness of what refined means. I mean, you can be the leader of a high-tech company, and that's quite different, a quite different look in today's society than being a leader of maybe a financial services organization or a law firm where it's important to look more professional than maybe it is appropriate in a technology company where often you see people that are branding themselves as super casual and laid back. It's a deliberate thing, either way, it's very, very deliberate. And that's the whole point of this first bullet point, the walk, talk, and look. It needs to be very deliberate, the way you dress, the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you look, to fit the organization, the culture of the organization you're with, as well as with a focus on the other people and not yourself so much. Why is all that so important? I mean, it's kind of nebulous. There are a lot of books have been written about this. One of the books that I was just talking about the other day that you can still get on the internet, but it's by a fellow named John Ringer. And it's the name of the book is Winning Through Intimidation. It came out years ago. But it talks about how all of your mannerisms and all of the things that you walk and talk and look will affect other people. And you can use it to intimidate other people. You can use it to include other people. You can use it to be friendly or to not be friendly. It's all deliberate. And as a leader, you have to realize that it's something that you control and that you need to really think about it, because it needs to be a very, very planful and deliberate thing. You don't want to just come to work without a plan, like you just fell out of bed and your hair is all tousled and you look grungy and whatever. I mean, that's just totally inappropriate. But it's also not appropriate to come very casual or sloppy in a very formal organization. You need to do it appropriately based upon the organization. My point is, you need to be very deliberate about it and think about it and do it in a very deliberate and calculated way. Let's look at bullet 2, how are perceptions formed? Why is it so important? And the reason it is so important is because people are looking at you, if you're a leader, even if you're not a leader, people are looking at you, wherever you are, 24/7, and they are continually, perpetually, always, almost like a smartphone camera going click, click, click. They're looking at you and taking a picture in their mind and making judgments, assessments, and decisions. When they look at you, do I respect that person is one of the things that they'll think about. Does that person know what they're doing is one of the things they'll think about. Is that person competent? Is that person healthy? Is that person nice? Does that person like me? Is that person focused on something important? Is that person thinking about something totally different than what they're saying Or is what they're saying consistent with the way they're looking at me? Are they talking on their cell phone as they're walking and about to walk into a wall because they're unconscious? All of those kinds of things, silly some of them, but all of those judgments, all of those perceptions, people are going click, 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 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they are evaluating you as a leader. So what they think and what they perceive is based on what they observe and what they experience. So when people experience you, have you ever had a situation where someone says, oh, I know you, I met you so-and-so, or I met you here, or I met you with so-and-so, or whatever, and for the life of you, you can't think of when that was or who, I met you before, and you don't even realize it, and then all of a sudden, maybe they say something, or you recollect all of a sudden because of some appearance or because of something, and they say, oh, yeah, I remember, we met at such and such a situation. I have a business card, and on my business card, I have a painting, which is a portrait, if you will, of my head. It's a piece of art done by my son, who's a very gifted artist. And it says on the card, the left side of the card is this portrait, this head, and then on the right it says DGR, my initials, and all that, the CEO's coach. And a while back, I was at a function down in Orange County, California, and I met someone, and we were chatting, and we were a very interesting conversation. And then finally, near the end of the conversation, we said, you know, we really ought to get together. We ought to stay in touch. And they said, do you have a card? And I said, yeah, I have a card. Do you have a card? And I gave this person my card, and they went with their fingers, I've met you before. I said, really? And they said, yes, I remember this card. And because the card is so distinctive, because it has a painted portrait of me and whatever, it's an unusual business card, they remembered the business card more than they remembered me. Isn't that interesting? It's funny what people will remember, and then they will put the pieces together at a different time. So people's perception is very, very important, and you need to be aware of that, and you need to be conscious of that, and you need to be deliberate, planful with that. So how do you do that? The first thing you do is the third bullet. You get feedback. You literally ask people what they see, what they think, and what's going on. The simplest and easiest way to get feedback is not only in conversation, just, you know, oh, really? Well, what? It's like when you get a new account, you say, well, how did you hear about me? Or how did you hear about our organization? Or what magazines do you read, and whatever. Another way to get it is to put together a survey. You can use SurveyMonkey or one of those kind of things electronically. Or what I did years and years ago, someone gave me the idea, and I used it regularly, and it was very, very helpful. I asked the people that I worked with and the people that I knew and my clients. I was a stockbroker, account executive is what they call it now, or financial advisor. But back when I did it, it was called a stockbroker. And I was a stockbroker with Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith. So I was a young fellow. I looked too young to be really knowledgeable in investments, so I grew a mustache. Now I have a full beard, which is another story. But I had a mustache when I was with Merrill Lynch. And the reason I did that very deliberately was to make me look a little bit more mature, because I was very young. And most of the people that had money were older, and I wanted them to be comfortable with me and not think I was a young, innocent, ignorant pup. And so what I did at Merrill Lynch when I was there is I put together on a piece of paper, very, very simple, what are three, I'm trying to improve, always trying to improve, kind of like Kaizen, right? The Japanese word for continuous improvement. I'm always trying to improve. What three things do I do well or am I good at, and what three things do you think I should work on to improve? And it would just be three things and three things, three pluses and three areas to grow or to improve or to work on. And I would give that piece of paper with an envelope with my name on it, just a blank envelope. I gave one to my sales assistant. I gave one to a couple of the other brokers. I gave one to my sales manager, one to my manager. I gave it to several different clients. I gave one to my wife. I gave 3 or 4 out to different friends. And I ended up with about 15, 20 sheets, feedback sheets, with some feedback as to what they thought I did well and what they thought I needed to improve. And over the years, I did it more and more and got more and more sophisticated. Now I do it on a regular basis with clients. And in fact, I'm doing it right now with a group that I'm working at called Maestro Network, or the Maestro Group. And it's all executives that I work with, and we're doing the evaluation, asking them for feedback as to what we're doing right and what we need to improve. And that concept of asking for feedback should be, if you're going to be a great leader, should be something you do on a regular and perpetual basis. Every so often, you need to get feedback. You need to tweak. You need to make course corrections. You need to see if you're on track. That is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it's a sign of strength. It's just like football players watching their films and working with their coach and how can they improve for the next game, and looking at the films of their opponent for the next week's game and what are their weak spots and what are their strengths. You want to be doing that to yourself, that kind of personal assessment and that kind of personal focus on personal growth on a regular basis, at least once a year, preferably even more than that. What you'll find when you do that is you're going to get some people that love you and some people that hate you, and then the majority of people in the middle are going to give you some useful feedback. If you ask your mother or your father or your brother, they'll give you one kind of feedback because they know you on an emotional level that other people don't. But if you just ask people you've casually met, new clients, why did you decide to work with me, or new customers if you're in a more of that kind of a trade business where you have customers as opposed to clients, and ask them, what do we do really well and what do we need to improve? What that will do is that you'll see that there'll be a pattern. You'll have the two extremes, like I said, but then in the middle, you'll notice a frequency of certain things. That's why it's important that you get several pieces of feedback. And you can combine this with verbal feedback and just feedback that you get from many different sources. And you're looking for patterns. You're looking for patterns. It's all about pattern recognition. If everybody's focused on one thing, or if the majority of people focus on one area for you to either improve, or an area that you're really good at or that they think you're good at, there's probably some validity to it. It's when you get a pattern of areas that need to be worked on that it becomes really, really useful. And what this does, this feedback, is it develops for you awareness. You are not totally aware of what other people are seeing and what they're feeling and what their perceptions are. Even when you ask them, you're still not going to fully know what it's all about. That's why you need to also do assessments periodically, and you also need to personal assessments, and you also need to just do random samples. All of it to make you more aware so that you catch problems early. It's like, depending on the business you're in, complaints or criticisms of the way you perform or your company performs are great opportunities, because now you have a focus on what it is you need to improve. Your customers, when they complain, really are helping you learn how to make your job, your career, your performance, your professionalism, how to bring it to a higher level. by being aware and being keen on asking for feedback and getting feedback. I have a gardener, actually a landscape contractor that's doing some work, and I'm about to can his contract because of the performance. And what's amazing about him is, I mean, he's a sharp guy. Some of what he's done has been pretty good, but there have been some real serious shortcomings. When you make a suggestion or when you give him feedback, he becomes defensive. And he tries to excuse why. Reflex comes back with why he did it this way instead of that way. This way is the preferred, or the more expensive, or the higher quality, or the recommended, or the as is in the contract. Well, you know, and then they go into an excuse, or they go into an explanation of why they're not doing that, or why that's something outside of their control. You never want to be a victim of that. That's the victim mentality. You don't want to go that way when you're getting feedback, especially when you're getting negative feedback or you're getting criticisms. You need to embrace it. You need to include it. You need to bring it in, digest it, and figure out why did that person say or perceive it this way. Were they accurate? Has anyone else ever given you similar feedback? Or it's the first time ever anybody's ever noticed this? Well, then maybe it's their problem. But when you're getting this feedback, it's important that you embrace it, that you bring it in, that you digest it, and that you are aware of it, and that you make judgments on it as to whether it's accurate or not. And where it's accurate, and sometimes it can be very stinging, it can be very humiliating when someone gives you feedback that's valid, honest, and quite downright embarrassing that people are noticing this because I can't believe I did that. It's like using a bad word, a word that is beyond the pale. I know I've done that, if you've ever done that. And then when someone calls you on it, how do you react? See, the reality is when they call you on it, they're helping you. And so you need to react appropriately to work on fixing it. And that comes to the last bullet, formulating a written plan. So you get all these different things that you need to work on and that you're really good at. And some things you might be good at, but you want to even be better at. Formulating a written plan means that you're doing what we might call gap analysis. You're being honest with yourself as to where you are on all of these behaviors. And then you're defining in writing, you're defining what it is you want to become or how you want to behave or what it is you want to do. And the difference between where you really are and where you really want to be is a gap. And so that's why accountants call it a gap analysis, or different people, construction times. I mean, a lot of different organizations or professions use this concept of gap analysis. And so then you design a written plan for closing the gap or for becoming that which you want to become or for becoming a better leader, a great leader. And that should be a written plan. And we will talk more about a written plan. Now, bear in mind, this is all introductory perception of where we're going to be going with this webinar. Right now, before we go to the next slide, I want to tell you something. I've written a couple of books. One is the CEO Code, and the other is Idiot's Guide, Management Skills. I would highly recommend, if you're looking at how to become a great leader, both of these books would be very, very helpful. Look them up on Amazon. They're inexpensive. You can get the Kindle version or the electronic version or get the book, but they're very, very helpful. I just started yesterday with a new client. What I do primarily is coach executives. And this fellow is a young, really, really bright architect. And he's got a Yale master's degree and USC undergraduate with honors and all this kind of stuff. I mean, he's very, very, very bright. He's building his own architectural business, and so I'm going to be working with him. And part of what we're doing at the very beginning is developing his keen awareness. Now, he's very, very bright. He's very, very sharp, but there are certain areas that, because of his life to this point, he hasn't focused on in building a business, on working with people, becoming more deliberate. And so one of the things that I've recommended he do is he go on my website and take an assessment. The purpose of the assessment is to give personal awareness at a deeper level as to how he comes across and relates to people. It's a model called the DISC model, D-I-S-C. And so I've got the two books that you might find very, very interesting if you're working on leadership. Also, on my website, there's under communication, then there's a section called assessments, and that's where you'll see the DISC, the D-I-S-C assessment that you can take. You can look at samples for free, and then if you want to take it, you can take it for $49 or $59 bucks. And it will give you incredible insights into things that we're going to be talking about. The other thing you can do, if you wish, when you're formulating your written plan, is you can call me pro bono. That means free. You can call me, and I'm more than happy to give you more guidance and more personalized attention, if you will, and focus on an issue, if you wish. I'm happy to do that. I do this business because I love helping people, and second or third, I'm concerned about earning a living because I don't need to worry about that at this point. So if you want to call me, don't hesitate to call. My phone number is 714-307-4438. It's on my website. It's on my LinkedIn profile. My cell phone, that's the number I gave you, is out there. My LinkedIn page is David Rolander. My website is davidrolander.com, DAVIDROHLANDER.com. All of that, which I've just been talking about, except for if you go on Amazon, it's $10 for the book or whatever. That's all free. And if I can be of any help to you as we go through this, and you think that it might be beneficial, don't hesitate to call or send me an email. And I'd love to hook up with you on LinkedIn if you like. I put a lot of information on LinkedIn as well that might be helpful for you. So let's get right into the next thing. We're aware now. What is it we need to be aware of? Number one is integrity. What do we mean by integrity? I mean, you can look it up in the dictionary or online in synonyms and antonyms and whatever. Integrity can mean a lot of different things. Let me give you my definition of integrity as it relates to this discussion on the behaviors of great leaders. A person with integrity, and we'll assume that's you, is someone who knows what they believe in and what their values are. They very clearly know what they believe in and what their values are. They know it. Number two, they are able to express it. They are able to write about it. They are able to share it. They are able to talk about it with other people, and they're able to influence other people with those values, beliefs, and behaviors. And number three, they walk the talk, or they act the part, or they live their values and beliefs. So integrity is where someone clearly knows who they are, values and beliefs. They're able to express it in writing and verbally and influence others with it. And number three, they walk, their activities, their behaviors are consistent. When they're at work, when they're at home, when they're at play, when they're socializing, when they're out with the boys or out with the girls or whatever it is, they are consistent with those behaviors, beliefs, and values. That's what we mean by integrity. It's congruent. It's convergent. They all three relate. So you could say they don't have to talk, they don't have to share. If you will just watch their behavior, you'll be able to understand and be able to recite what a person's values and beliefs are. In other words, if you watch me for 24 hours, you should be able to sit down and write down what are my values and beliefs. Not hearing a word, just watching my behavior. You see how this ties into what we said earlier. People are watching you 24/7, and what you're telling them by your behavior is what you believe and what you value. It's important that that be congruent with what you really believe, what you say you believe, and what you actually do. And when you have that, you have integrity. Now, let's focus on you. I'm asking you now to look in the mirror and to think about yourself. Think about what you believe and what you value. I went to Claremont Graduate School in management after my master's. 10 years after my master's, I went back to school. And I went there because I wanted to be exposed to Peter Drucker, who is a giant in business thinking. He's called the father of management by many. He came up with the concept way back in the early 1900s. He was very old when I got to experience his classroom and get to know him, but it was a marvelous experience. And in the process of going to school, I came up with one of the courses that had these three next bullets in it. And it's in a book called Leadership and the Quest for Integrity. Leadership and the Quest for Integrity by two guys, Badaroka and Ellsworth, if you're interested, if you'd like to read. So what are they? They basically theorize, and I agree, that a leader has certain prejudices or views or beliefs. If you're leading other people, you're looking at yourself and at others from one of three viewpoints. You are either a value-driven leader, or a results-driven leader, or a political leader. So let's talk about the three. Now, you probably have a little bit of all three, but you clearly, if you understand the concept and if you really know yourself well, if you're really aware of yourself, you will admit and you will understand that you're primarily one of the three, either value-driven, results-driven, or a political leader. A value-driven leader, remember we're asking you to think about yourself here. Who are you? A value-driven leader is one that believes certain things are very, very valuable, and they have very definitive beliefs, and they act on those beliefs because they think values are the most important thing. Their values are preeminent. Let me give you an example of that. Many times religious or spiritual or political organizations, such as Planned Parenthood or those kinds of things, they are driven by particular values, things that they believe. The Planned Parenthood, they believe that women have a right to choose. The evangelical church believes that a woman should believe in the right to life. So those are two different points of view or values. So a value-driven leader believes in certain values. A good business example of a value-driven leader is a story that's been going around business schools for decades, and it's about Jim Burke. And Jim Burke was the president and CEO of Johnson & Johnson. And many years ago, there was an incident where someone got some Tylenol off of a shelf at a drugstore. They took some Tylenol and they died. They found out that the death was caused by the Tylenol. Something had been tampered with or done, and they had no idea how that happened. What Jim Burke did as chairman, CEO of Johnson & Johnson is he immediately had the company put out a notice and withdraw Johnson & Johnson from all homes, hospitals, drugstores, everywhere and anywhere. He said, do not take a Tylenol. Please send it back to us for us to examine and destroy. That was a very expensive decision. Someone had died because of the organization being a value-driven company, Johnson & Johnson. At that time, he immediately ordered all the Tylenol to stop being sold and to be brought back, and now it's fine. But he did it based on values. He didn't do it because he thought it would make him a buck, and he didn't do it because he thought it was politically correct. He did it because of values. That is an illustration of a value-driven organization. A results-driven organization, on the other hand, or a results-driven leader, we're talking about you now, whether you are value-driven or results-driven, a results-driven leader wants to get results. They want to make that sale. They want to make profits. They want to make it happen. If you want to think of an illustration of someone who is results-oriented, think of the current President of the United States, Donald Trump. He's very much a results-driven leader. He wants to win, he wants to get results, and he will do whatever it takes to get those results. A real aggressive salesperson is going to do whatever it takes to get those results. A Marine, a United States Marine, will do what it takes to take that hill. They want to get the result. There's an old joke about the Marine Corps. Ours is not Teresa Y. Ours is just to do or die. That's kind of the result in extreme mode, a results-driven leader, someone who wants to make that sale and will walk over broken glass or fire or whatever to get that result. That's a results-driven leader. Political leader. Well, just think politics. Think of any politician you care to on television now or in the past, and you know what a political leader is. And it's someone, the basic core of a political leader or a politically driven leader is they want to bring people together. Now, politicians want to bring people together so that they can get reelected. In organizations, they want to typically bring people together. One of their primary motivations is so that they can stay in control. Politics and control go hand in hand. Their personal control is very, very important to a political leader, and their personal status. I mean, if you think about well, I don't want to mention any names, but think about any politician you want to think about, and you know that they will say and do almost anything if you will vote for them. I've met several very, very high-ranking U.S. politicians, and what is amazing, two of them in particular I'm thinking of, I won't mention their names. I met one in L.A. at a restaurant, and I recognized him, and I said, "Hi, how are you?" And the third sentence out of his mouth was, "Will you vote for me? Are you going to vote for me?" That's all he cared about. Are you going to vote for me? The other one I met at an airport, and he was Speaker of the House of Representatives, and his only concern was what was my voting, where was I going to vote, what did I think of these issues, is there anything he could do to get me to vote for his ideas and for him. It's just the way politicians think. In an organization, in a company, we don't mean that kind of perverted political thinking like you see in Washington, but rather we're focusing on the political idea, though, of getting and bringing everyone together. And they will bend the rules, they'll do this, they'll do that, in order to get people to agree. Now, why are these three things important? You can be a value-driven leader, a results-driven leader, or a political leader within any organization or within an organization and be successful. There's not one that is better than the other as far as looking to be successful and being a great leader. You can be value-driven and become a great leader. You can be results-driven and become a great leader. You can be politically driven and become a great leader. What's important for you to remember is that as you analyze who you are and which of the three, realize that by definition you have certain prejudices or points of view. It relates to how you look at money. It relates to how you look at people. It relates to how you look at the work ethic and how you look at seniority and a zillion other things. All are affected by your point of view, whether you're value-driven, results-driven, or politically driven. But the last bullet says consistency and congruence. That's what's important. For you to have integrity, you have to know which of the three you are, and you have to be consistent. You have to be congruent. Your people have to know what you believe and what you think is correct, values, results, or political considerations. Where you have problems in an organization and where it compromises you as a leader is when you say one thing and you do another. You say you're value-driven and you make a decision based on politics. Or you say you're politically driven and then you do something that destroys people because you want to just get that result and make money. So the important thing is for you to know which of the three you are and practice that consistently and with congruence. What that will do is it will give you strength and integrity, and your people will know who it is you are that they're working for. And they will accept or reject you as a person, but they need to and they deserve to know what it is you believe and what you value. So it's important for you to know that. Spend some time. If you want to talk about it, give me a call or send me an email, and we can talk about it. It's very, very important for you to really be honest and completely candid with yourself so that you know what you really believe in before we can do anything. Next, let's talk about self-management. A great leader is a great self-manager. Number one, they're aware. And you can see when I talk about awareness, I'm talking about a lot more than just you're aware of whether you're overweight or not, or you're aware of whether you're on time or not. I'm talking about a very deep level of awareness. Great leaders have self-control. In fact, self-control, Carlyle said many years ago, in the 1800s, a man who controls himself is mightier than a man who controls an army. So that means you are in absolute self-control, and the more so, the better. So that you do what you do because you've thought about it, it relates to your values, and you very deliberately make your decision. And that goes to whether or not you're going to have dessert, whether you're going to have a drink, whether you're going to exercise, whether you're going to talk to somebody, whether you're going to pick up the phone, whether you're going to call that prospect, and everything else about your behavior. You control it. You manage it. You are the master of your ship. They are perceptive of others, and they understand and are aware of all the nuances of another person. And so they're able to not only manage their own emotion, but they're able to manage the emotion of others. Did you hear what I just said? They're able to manage the emotion of other people. They perceive and understand people, and it directly relates to emotional management, which, as you hopefully know, is now called emotional intelligence. If you have not read anything on emotional intelligence, it's critical that you get a book and read about emotional intelligence. They're all over the bookshelves, all over in the store or online. There are all kinds of books on emotional intelligence. Pick the flavor you like best, but learn about emotional intelligence. Basically, what emotional intelligence is all about is being totally aware of your own emotions and why you feel the way you do, and being able to manage yourself emotionally. In other words, you don't raise your voice, you don't lose your temper, you don't get depressed, you don't get crazy, giddy, out of control, having fun, laughing, drinking, or whatever. You have emotional control of yourself. Number three, you're aware of other people's emotions. In other words, as you're with and you see and you relate to other people, you understand why they're doing what they're doing at an emotional level. You perceive the deeper motivations of people. And then number four, you're able to influence the other people and their emotions because you understand it well. And you know how to shall we say, pull those triggers or those strings and make people, influence people's behavior. And when you put all of those things together, you have a quotient, if you will, EQ, emotional quotient. You have a level of emotional intelligence. The better you are at that, the better chances you have of becoming a great leader. In fact, if you are not emotionally well adapted, adjusted, and in control, you don't stand a chance of becoming a great leader. You are going to self-destruct at some point. You might be good for a while, but you're ultimately going to hit the wall. I was a fighter pilot, as you may or may not know from reading my bio. I've talked to a lot of guys. I was in Vietnam. I flew 208 combat missions in Vietnam. I was never hit by enemy fire. I have talked to many people. I was in the air the same day John McCain was flying. Gives you a flavor for where I'm coming from. McCain and I were flying the same day. He got shot down. I came back unscathed. I've talked to many people that were shot down, not only in Vietnam, but in other wars. Invariably, when you really sit down and talk turkey and talk honest, they will admit that the reason they were shot down was they made a mistake. They screwed up. They did something, they deviated from what they knew was right. They somehow made a mistake and hit the wall. Almost every accident ends up being pilot error. Now, sometimes things just happen. But what the secret is to control all those things that you can control. And the one and the most important thing that you have to control as a leader is your emotions. You have to become a master of the ship relative to your emotions. And you have to learn how to influence and persuade other people. Very, very important. Notice next comes feedback and feed forward. Feedback is, we've already mentioned getting feedback. I'm mentioning it again. You want it at an emotional level as well. And when you find something that you put into your gap analysis and your plan for improvement, you're doing it based on the feedback that you've gotten from other people. Feed forward is when you develop the plan for how you're going to improve or change the way you behave and who you are. You tell other people that have given you feedback, who you have a good relationship with, whether that's family members, coworkers, whatever. You tell them what it is you're going to do and how it is you're going to behave in the future, and ask them to help you, remind you, hold you accountable to your new standard. That's called feed forward. You actually anticipate and tell other people what it is you're going to do and ask them to help you, to encourage you, and to call you if you deviate from this new objective. It's a very strong social mechanism to help influence your behavior. When you tell people, you realize that you've been interrupting them and you're not going to interrupt people any longer. In fact, if I interrupt, will you hold up your finger and call me accountable and tell me to just put your finger over your lips and say, effectively say, shut up, don't talk, you're interrupting. And just that little signal, the finger on the lip from a coworker or whatever, and you have a good rapport with that person, you trust that person, they trust you, and their finger on their lip reminds you, oop, I interrupted, I don't want to interrupt anymore. That's feed forward in action. And that's what you want to do with those things that you want to improve in your behavior. Measurement comes next. You need to measure, measure, measure. You need to measure yourself. We've already talked about this in the gap analysis, but you need to measure yourself in any area that's important that you want to improve. It could be something as simple and mundane as exercise or your weight, or it could be something, a communication thing like interrupting people or listening better, or it could be something more complex like doing a more thorough analysis or better research, and that kind of thing. Then you want to review and adjust on a regular basis, and this should be a written plan of reviewing and adjusting your behaviors. You're measuring them on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and then you're reviewing your progress, and you actually have charts and graphs to measure and yourself and your behaviors, and you work on it. This concept is nothing new. One of my favorite people that did this that's very famous is Ben Franklin. Benjamin Franklin had 13 virtues that he thought were important. You can look online and look up Ben Franklin's 13 virtues and see what he used to do. But he used to carry a card around in his pocket with the virtue as a reminder, so that each month he would work on one of the virtues, and he would carry a card around in his pocket or a piece of paper in his pocket that reminded him of that virtue, so that it would help him remember to work on that virtue and on developing that skill and that behavior. That was Benjamin Franklin, one of our founding fathers. If it was good enough for him, it's good enough for me. Hopefully it's good enough for you. Let's look at the next slide. Activities and habits. Let's get real mechanical here. What I suggest you do is when you've done all this and you've figured out all these things you want to improve in and all these behaviors, don't forget, if you have any problems with any of this, give me a call or get one of my books. This is all explained very thoroughly in the book, and I'm also happy to talk to you about it online or on the phone. One of the things that I suggest you do is you create an ideal week. It means Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Block out the time. What time do you get up in the morning? What time do you go to bed at night? Ideally, so you get enough sleep. And then you start to look at it and think about, well, what am I going to do in this week? If you want to have, my motto is create your masterpiece. And in my coaching, I help executives create a masterpiece. This is part of the core of creating that masterpiece. The year, the decade, the life that you're leading can be broken down to minutes, seconds, days, and weeks. If you don't have an ideal image or concept or idea of what it is you want to do and where you want to go, how will you ever get there? I mean, you can have pictures, you can have this, you can have that, all kinds of charts. Let's make it real practical. What activities do you need to do on a daily, weekly basis in order to achieve what it is you want to achieve at work and in your personal life? And on this ideal week, piece of paper, and you can have it online or in your phone as well, but there's something very powerful about writing it on a piece of paper or typing it on a piece of paper, maybe even putting, what I've done with my ideal week is I have it, I did it on my computer, I printed it out, and I put vinyl on it, or not vinyl, but what do they call it? You know, the glossy, the word is escaping me. And so it's contained in this, what's that called? Vinyl, not vinyl. You know what I'm talking about, where you go down to the print shop and they put that gloss on, that plastic on it to hold it good. The things that you want to do in your ideal week can be categorized into some areas. Specifically at business and in most endeavors, look at the next 4 bullets. Planning, communicating, managing, and executing. You want to spend time every day, early in the morning and at the end of the day, with a few minutes of planning, looking at what you've done, what it is you want to do, and what sequence you have to do those things. Reflecting on who you are, where you're going. And ideally, you have benchmarks and you write things down and you are measuring with charts those things that are important that you need to do. But every day, morning and evening, you need to have a planning session with yourself. Something that you absolutely, just like you brush your teeth, you take a shower and you go to the bathroom or whatever it is you do that you have to do every day, you need to get that kind of a mindset with your written daily, weekly plan. Every morning and every night, deliberately spending time thinking about what it is you're doing and why, and the benchmarks and the measurement of your day, your goals, etc. Number two, you have to spend time communicating. The best laid plans of mice and men are useless unless they're communicated and implemented and done. And the first step of implementation is communicating effectively with your other people. Because as a leader, by definition, it means you're working with other people. So you need to effectively communicate with those people. What I would highly recommend you do, and this is in the book, The CEO Code, is that you have regular, maybe weekly or biweekly, one-on-one meetings with each of your direct reports where you talk about their goals and what it is they're achieving and how you can help them achieve their goals. It's basically a coaching session where you meet with your key people and then you have those key people meet with their key people. It's a great way to change the culture of an organization and dramatically help the organization improve. If you want some help and some ideas on what to do in those one-on-one meetings, give me a jingle or send me an email, and I'm happy to share some sample agendas with you. So planning comes number one. Number two is communicating, critically important. The leader who goes from management, becomes a leader, gets a promotion, and they end up sitting in their office is making a huge mistake. They don't realize that being a leader is going out and talking to the troops, talking to the people, talking to everybody, knowing their situation, knowing their personal situation, understanding how their health is, understanding everything about them that you can legally and politically correctly know about a person to help you influence and manage and help them live a more successful life. And that relates to managing. Managing is the third bullet, right? Planning, communicating, managing. And that's where you're measuring others and you're measuring production and you're measuring behaviors and you're measuring results and outcomes and money and budgets and all that's managing. And then executing is doing it. That's number four. Executing, actually doing the work. Sitting down, doing the work, turning the wrench, hitting the hammer, making it happen, executing. Critically important. Now, in process of doing this ideal week, all of those same attributes, planning, communicating, managing, and executing, relates to your personal life and your family life. So you need to have personal balance. If you're going to become a great leader and become successful, it does not mean that you're going to sit in the office and sit at work 80 hours a week and become a work maniac. No. Balance is important because without personal balance, you will lose your health, you'll lose your attitude, and you'll lose your perspective. You need to have some balance in your life. It does not do any. Now, you can do what, and some people advocate, screw balance. If you really want to do something, you have to do whatever's required, just go do it. Realize that if you take that approach, you're probably going to do like a lot of very successful people financially. You're going to lose your marriage. Maybe you're going to lose your kids. They're going to become druggies or dope addicts or whatever. Or they're going to be, hit the wall and burn, or you're going to lose friendships, or when you get fired, you're not going to have anybody you can go to for a new job because you don't have any friends. You need to have balance. And if you want to not have balance, go for it. It's like athletes that go for the Olympics. They finish. Many of them have real struggles with finding balance after the intensity with which they did their sport, where that was nothing in their life. I mean, I think of old Mark, what was his name, the guy that was the swimmer. And after he won all the gold medals, and then he ended up hitting the bottle and getting arrested for being drunk driving and whatever. That's the kind of thing I'm saying. You want to avoid that kind of stuff if possible. And the way you avoid that is you work on balance, personal balance. And that's what I call really focusing on the big picture. Because when you think about the big picture, how many years are you going to live? And what is your life really all about? I talk about, in my coaching, I talk about concept, context, content. 3 C's, right? What is the concept of your life? Why do you exist? What is your life's purpose? If you have not clarified that, you're just spinning your wheels, and you're maybe going from job to job to job, or you're wandering. You're a wandering generation. You don't know what it's all about, Alfie, as the movie many years ago said. What, Alfie? And then the song is, what's it all about, Alfie? You need to understand the concept. Then you need to understand the context, and that is who you're doing it with and for, where you're most comfortable, where you're optimizing your talents and your skills. And then the last thing is the content. That's the stuff that you do, stuff. Funny words, stuff, S-T-U-F-F. It's for me, my stuff is doing webinars, writing books, giving speeches, doing coaching, developing groups. So those are some of the things that I do that are stuff. That's my content. That's the stuff I do. But then you go up a notch, and it's who to, what's the context, and then a higher notch, what's the concept, which I'd be happy to talk to you about if you want to give me a call or get in touch with me. So that's focusing on your big picture and what it is your life is all about. And to be a great leader, you need to have those things identified, defined, and know what it is you're doing and where it is you're going. A great leader is other-focused. And what do we mean by other-focused? Other-focused means that they're in the second person, not the first person. They're primarily concerned about the other person, the second person. They manage by walking around, which we've already talked about, and they are objective versus subjective in the way they measure things. In other words, they're not ruled by emotional, subjective things, but they're looking at the numbers. They're looking at the reality of production. They're looking to see how did the person do relative to the objectives, and it's a measurement that is definable and is void of emotional, subjective measures. They have a balance between understanding business versus personal, and they know how to engage with people in a business venue and in a business sense without losing sight of the personal engagement and without crossing the line into meddling or into things that are incorrect or inappropriate. They have defined that balance, and then they focus on others in their measurements. They're primarily focusing on themselves and measuring themselves, and then they're able to shift to the next gear. It's like driving a car and being in first gear. To get started, you have to focus on yourself. But in order to go anywhere, you have to shift into second gear, and you have to start measuring and dealing with other people, managed by walking around, looking at measuring other people, helping other people, engaging them business-wise as well as on a personal level, and then measuring progress. So they're other-focused. A great leader is other-focused, but the reason they're able to focus on others is they have organized, disciplined, and controlled themselves first. Very difficult to direct, organize, and lead others if your own personal life is screwed up or in a shambles. You have to it's like on an airplane. When you've been on an airplane and you hear the flight attendant say, if we have an emergency, there are oxygen masks that will come from the ceiling. Please, if you're with a child, put the mask on yourself first so that you stay conscious, and then help the child with their mask. You have to have your own mask on first. You have to have your own life together first, and then you can help other people if you want to be a great leader. What do they pay attention to, right? That's what this one's all about. So how do you spend your time and how do you expend your resources? Part of the inventory that you need to take on yourself is by doing an audit. You know what audit is? That's what accountants do. They do audits where you measure everything. You need to do an audit of your time and an audit of how you spend your money, credit cards, checking accounts, cash. How do you spend money? And then that's going to define what it is you're personally interested in and what your goals are. If you say you don't have any goals, or if you really haven't defined your goals, Do this little exercise of an audit on your time and your resources, your money, and you will see what your goals really are. Doesn't matter what you say. Look at how you're spending your time and your money, and you'll know that reality. Understand the difference between small talk and business talk. Small talk is great to say, hi, how are you, how's the weather, how was the game, whatever. But you ultimately have to differentiate between small talk and business talk. And you need to pay attention primarily to business talk. People that are small talkers, you see them in social environments, networking functions, at the local restaurant and bar. They're talk about nothing. They're gossiping, or they're talking about stuff or sports. They're into small talk. The reason people focus primarily on small talk is because they don't have any big ideas, and they're insecure, and they're basically not comfortable getting beyond themselves. And they're a little bit insecure in who they are. So they talk about others, and they talk about things, and they talk about sports, and they talk about stuff, because they don't want to take their own life seriously and look at the big picture of how are they going to change the world. It's the same with the business. You need to be focusing out of the small talk, and let's talk about the business and how are we going to change the world. Rewards and reprimands, you pay attention to that. You need to reward a lot, reprimand in private. You all know that. But it's very, very important that you understand that you influence people by the way you pay attention to them and what you pay attention to. So you need to reward people. And what is the biggest and best reward you can give anybody? What do you think the biggest and best reward you can give anybody? It's a handshake, a look in the eye, and two simple words: thank you. You shake somebody's hand, you look them in the eye, and you sincerely mean it and say it with empathy and with tone. Thank you. That's the biggest and best reward you can give anybody. And if you're romantically inclined, you can then seal it with a kiss. Notice other people's behaviors, the little nuances of behaviors. In fact, the third chapter in my book, The CEO Code, is about understanding. And it goes into the rewards and the behaviors and the noticing others' behaviors, their words, the tone of voice, and their small, minimal behaviors that you need to be able to analyze, understand, and use to help them achieve more and to help you understand how to influence them best. It's a very subtle thing. It's something that you need to study and work on. And Chapter 3 in the book is called Understanding, the book being the CEO Code. And it's helping you understand those nuances of reading people so that you become expert, masterful at reading other people and influencing other people. So what are the basic behaviors? The basic behaviors that we have talked about, to organize them now in just a couple of words, relate to this. Great leaders are continually working on self-improvement and engagement, and they take initiative in improving themselves and in engaging with other people. Great leaders are good with people. If you're leading, you're working with other people. That means you like, enjoy, and want to be with other people, want to influence and help other people, want to help them grow and achieve at a higher level. And so people for you are an enjoyable and a neat, wonderful, fun thing. Some people would rather be alone. Some people would rather be isolated. I can remember working with one client, and he said, I wish all my people were computers. They'd be so much easier to work with. And he's very technical, and he's very bright, and he's got a master's degree and all kinds of stuff. Very, very bright with computers, but he just doesn't understand or really care that much about other people. His favorite sport is bicycle riding, and he also enjoys sailing. Why? Because he's not with anybody else. He's just with himself. Some people are that way. A leader typically really enjoys and is stimulated by being with people and is very good with people. You have to love people to be a great leader. A great leader is organized and controlled. They are on time. They end on time. They are organized. They are not disheveled and confused. They are conspicuously organized, and they are in control of themselves, and they're in control of the situation that they're in. They automatically, the control gravitates to them. Have you ever been in a situation where they're looking for my son, let me give you an example. He was on a jury trial, and when the jury, this is the artist, right? And he's been exposed to this stuff all of his life from me, and he's very, very good at it. When the jury went, I just talking to him last night about this, when the jury went into the jury room, everybody in the room wanted him to be the foreman of the jury. Everybody. They all said, no, you be the foreman, you be the foreman, you be the foreman. So that a great leader, people gravitate to them and they want them, they elevate them, they ask them to be the leader. And that's not something where they don't claim it, say, I am the leader. People want them to be a great leader. Now, how does that happen? Because they're good with people, because they're organized, because they're in control, and people will naturally gravitate and encourage them. Why don't you be the leader? They focus on planning. A great leader is planning focused. Now, a lot of people run helter-skelter. They just run free. They're like a loose cannon. You see this in national situations all the time. People that just, they're off. They're like loose, the expression loose cannon, right? They're just rocking and rolling here or there. You never know where they're going to go or what they're going to do. They're not focused. A great leader is a master communicator. And the important thing to remember about becoming a master communicator, you've heard people refer to presidents like Reagan or Obama or Clinton or Kennedy or FDR. And when you think of those presidents, some people would call them all great communicators. But I would disagree with that. The reason I would disagree is because what they all did was broadcast. They talked or they used the radio or the television or the teleprompter, whatever it is, and they talked. That's a very small part of effective communication. The biggest part of being an effective communicator is listening. Being able to understand a person, the other person's emotions, being able to read between the lines, being able to hear what's not being said, being able to emotionally influence other people by listening to them and by communicating in a very subtle, casual way with people. That's a great communicator. Someone who is a great listener, someone who is able to influence people without just giving speeches and without saying one thing in his speech and then doing something completely different in there, which most politicians do. It doesn't really matter what they, as they say, if the only time they lie is when their lips are moving. That's not a great communicator. That's someone who can broadcast, and there's no consequences to that, except that they get reelected, and that's the only thing they're concerned about. So being a great communicator has nothing to do with what you see in Washington, D.C. Most of them are not that effective. And when you think about running a company and organizing and motivating people to action, sure, you can influence the masses with television and stuff, but that's not being a great communicator. That's being manipulative. It's different. It's a whole different thing than what we're talking about here. We're talking about a level of communication and a level of caring and integrity that goes far beyond what you see on television or what the typical politician spouts off from speech to speech. Every town they're saying something different, depending on what they think the town wants to hear. So communication is critically important. In order to be an effective communicator, you have to have the first elements of communication. You have to have trust, respect, understanding, empathy, and some kind of resolution. Look at, they can't agree on anything in Washington, D.C. Why is that? Because they're bad communicators. A good communicator, a great communicator, is someone who is able to establish and hold trust, respect, understanding, empathy, and resolution. The first 5 chapters of the CEO Code are trust, Chapter 2 is respect, Chapter 3 is understanding, Chapter 4 is empathy, and Chapter 5, resolution. They delegate well. There's a whole chapter in the book, CEO Code, about delegation. We've talked about all the elements of effective delegation today. If you want it broken down into specific 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps, get the book CEO Code and read about delegation. But a great communicator and a great leader is a great delegator. And delegation is not about dumping or getting rid of tasks that you don't want to do. Delegation, like we've said over and over again this morning, although we didn't call it delegation, but it's about working with other people and helping them achieve their best possible level of achievement. It's helping other people. Delegation is a way to help people grow. Delegation is a way to empower people. Delegation is a way to develop leaders. And that's what we've been talking about. And then the last and most basic thing is they execute. They actually do it. They say they're going to do it, they do it. If they say 10 o'clock, that's 10 o'clock is the hour. If they say they're going to send you a note, they send you a note. If they say they're going to achieve something, they achieve it. They execute. They do it. They don't try. They just do it. A great leader does not try. They execute. Now, we have about 8 minutes left.